everybody. Welcome to the Think Space. Bring that big old brain of yours into this safe space and we shall communicate telepathically. Actually, not telepathically, because that would mean there would be no speaking and you would have to interpret my meaning, my message, my thoughts via looks only. The waggle of my eyebrow, the intensity of my gaze. And that might be a little confronting. Let's stick with the talking thing. There will be lots of speaking about thinking.
Thinking.
And if that doesn't turn you on, well, I don't know. I think you might have a screw loose. Maybe you can't think properly.
Thinking.
It's a think piece. Or a think piece. Or a think piece. Think piece. Think piece, man. Time's a wasting. We've got to get to this. Chop, chop. That'll be a good marker for when I'm trying to sync up the sound and the picture later. Today's episode, will my next thought be my last thought? God forbid. Unless it's the greatest thought ever thunk by a human being, I think you should be hoping that your next thought not be your last thought. So I got that completely wrong. It was, will my next thought be my best thought? And as we go through today's inspirations, I guess, or thematic tie-ins to the post, I'm going to effortlessly, and I mean effortlessly, tie together the thinker, and the thinker. And I mean it will be seamless. You won't even notice the join. You probably don't even know I know for a fact you don't know what I'm talking about. So let's get into it. Noggin swap. I asked a couple of weeks ago, what do you look like when you're nude? Something missing. In a similar vein, what do you look like when you're thinking? Here's a couple of choice interpretations by moi, non-graduate of Juilliard drama school, of any drama school. With all those poses out of the way and the question posed, what do you look like when you're thinking? We've pulled up the Behind the Streams bus at the first stop, the thinker. The thinker was sculpted by Auguste Rodin. You know it, posers know it, tropes know it. It's one of those things that appears in books and movies and, people always doing the... Actually, how does he look? There are something like 28-ish casts of the thinker around the world at different galleries. But only a handful of those. I think I read 8-ish. If I add ish to things, that makes it accurate. Only about 8 were cast during Rodin's lifetime. Brain fart. If you put those 28 casts of the thinker in the same place, would it look like a group of people thinking, or would it look like some kind of constipation conference sponsored by a laxative brand? This is what you call deep thought. The original poser for the thinker was this yoked and swole French dude, I think he was French, muscular little wrestler guy, and prize fighter. I forgot to say prize fighter. And his name was Jean Baud. B-A-U-D. Is that how you say that? Ish. Anyway, that's who posed for the sculpture. That's just a fact. The very first casting of the thinker was originally called La Pensieux in French and was made in 1904. And that's the one that's in Paris. That's number 1. We're number 1. Just another fact I'm dropping on you. Step in facts all over the place. Ish. Here's another fact. There was a casting outside of the Cleveland Museum of Art. I really should have looked that up before I said it. In 1970. Someone blew it up. Well, they blew up the base of it, I believe. Boom! That's another fact. Literally with the boom.
Sitting in the morning sun.
The pose has been, mimicked and used as a trope. There's so many cultural references of it.
Thomas Griffin, a great philosopher.
Thomas, would you please go look for a job?
Why?
And that's been going on for, I'd say, an epoch and a half. But if the first one wasn't made till 1904, then I guess since then. That's not an epoch. How long is an epoch? Fact-ish. Interestingly, a lot of people misremember the actual pose and end up posing like this, with their fist against their coconut, instead of like this, which is kind of more pensive, actually.
The thinker or the stinker.
This makes thinking look hard. This makes it look kind of pleasant and dreamy. Facts-ish. They use that as an example of the Mandela effect, where, people pose like that because they think in their memory that that's what it looks like. And because people get themselves photographed like that and other people see it, it gets replicated, that gets planted in people's memories. Oh, that's actually what it looks like. But no, all 28 versions. Actually, I think it's the right hand, back of the right hand on the chin, propping his big noggin up. Because, he's in deep thought. Not painful, angsty thought. Deep thought. Everything comes back to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Here's a sentence. The pose is one of deep thought and contemplation, and the statue is often used as an image to represent philosophy. One of my favourite subjects. But we're not going to get into that today because that was me thinking for a good reason not to get into philosophy. And I couldn't think of one. What do you think he's thinking about? Looks like relationship troubles to me, that maybe he should go to couples therapy, or maybe that's what he's thinking about. Maybe he's wondering if he left the iron on. And one thing I read, it said it was initially named The Poet. Poetry will save your life. We should all try to be poets, I think. Maybe he's trying to think of a stanza. Maybe he's a poet. Ish. Speaking of poets, this is The Thinker. Okay, he's not a poet. He's a super smart villain in a comic book. But he is called The Thinker. And I did say I was going to seamlessly tie these things together. He is, as I said, a super villain. And one of his shticky things is that he wears a device on his head to amplify thought called a thinking cap. Isn't that nice? A thinking cap. Put your thinking cap on. The Thinker's already smart, right? But he puts it on and it amplifies thought and allows the wearer to use their brain to full capacity. I kind of don't like the sound of that because I like that there's dead spots in my brain, that there's rooms where nothing is happening. And the thought of having to make all your brain cells, you got to get to work. None of you can be slacking off or be on smoko.
I'm on Smoko!
You all got to be working 100%. If I'm wearing this cap, get to work. I find that kind of depressing. I think I read in the DC Comics version of The Thinker, because there's been a couple of variations, that he also has the ability to do telekinesis and mind control, which kind of sounds cool. I would like that mind control thing. What would I use that for?
I must not think their thoughts.
This is how you become a supervillain. It doesn't actually really matter, because if I put on the thinking cap, it would fry my brain, because apparently it's powered by dark matter that runs a particle accelerator. My brain's quite delicate. I think it would definitely, the poor thing. I've got enough trouble, so I really don't need that. But I can't deny that it would be nice to have a device that gave my brain a little boost juice, so to speak, like on call. I dictate. Well, I suppose that's why you would put on the cap. So what have we had so far? The Thinker, and now, finally, the real inspiration for this week's post, The Thinker. I would like to introduce you to Mr. Eckhart Tolle. I think Tolle. He thinks a lot about thinking. I'm going to come right out and say it, that I don't know a lot about Eckhart Tolle, including how to pronounce his name. I've never read one of his books, and his books are famous. His most famous being The Power of Now.
We're at now.
All I do really know about him is that he speaks very quietly and kind of slowly, which I find soothing. But hey, just because I don't know a lot about him doesn't make me ignorant. It's weird though, because I like this idea of presence and it sounds like the kind of guy that I would build some kind of shrine to. No room. Got no room for another shrine. The Tom York one takes up a whole corner. But I frequently consume things in sound bites, and that's kind of how he entered my life this week. I was watching the old TikTok. Someone in my constant flipping came on and hipped me to this technique that he uses, where you take a breath, close your eyes if you want, and then just think to yourself, I wonder what my next thought will be. It was astounding to me how all thoughts scatter, like they run away. Hide in corners. And it's like, I have no thoughts. There are no thoughts here. By focusing, you're not really thinking at all. There is nothing. I think that's his point. It's to try and help you see that nobody thinks all the time. There are moments of stillness where you can still be alert. He describes it as like a cat watching the mouse hole. The cat's super alert, waiting, but there's no real thought. There's just an alertness to the moment. And that even though you're not thinking, you still exist in that moment.
Don't think twice, it's all right.
And what a beautiful, freeing thought that is. Another interesting thing I found was that in saying, I wonder what my next thought will be, it kind of became important to me to pick a good thought, because I'm like, I don't want this next thought to be a dumb thought. I want it to be like a banger. All my thoughts need to be brilliant, and none of them are. So there's that. It kind of made me purposefully not want to think, just in case one snuck in there, like, take out the bins. I don't want that to be the thought.
Oh, I think I smell alright.
No. Your next thought will just be your next thought. And now we have really arrived at the post. And also, weirdly, the end of this episode. Funny how I just ended it right there. But I just thought of that just now. This will be the end. It's obvious by this week's post that I think a lot about thinking. Not as much as Eckhart Tolle. Happy thinking!